When you think of a democratic election, it's natural to imagine a straightforward system. One person, one vote. The candidate with the most votes wins, right? But that's not the case in the United States. It's a bit more complicated. Enter the Electoral College, a system that, for better or worse, has shaped every U.S. presidential election since the country's founding. The Electoral College is a unique process used to determine the winner of the U.S. presidential elections. Now, it's not a physical college, but rather a group of 538 people called electors. These electors are distributed among the 50 states in Washington, D.C., based on each state's representation in Congress. So, each state gets a certain number of electoral votes. That number equals the sum of its senators, 2 per state, and its representatives in the House, which is varied based on population. So, for example, California, with its large population, or Texas, say, has 55 electoral votes. They have more electoral votes. Meanwhile, a small state like Wyoming may only have just 3. So let's talk about how it works. On Election Day, millions of Americans cast their votes for president. But what they're actually doing is voting for a slate of electors who are pledged to vote for a specific candidate. These electors then cast the official vote for president. In most states, the winner of the popular vote, meaning the candidate who gets the most individual votes, wins that state's electoral votes. This is called the winner-takes-all system, and it's used in 48 states and Washington, D.C. There are 2 exceptions, Maine and Nebraska. These states use a proportional system, where some electoral votes are awarded based on who wins individual congressional districts, while others go to statewide winners. Why did the U.S. set up this system in the first place? The Electoral College was created in 1787 when the Constitution was merely drafted. Back then, the United States was a very young and fragile nation, and the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution were deeply divided on how to choose a president. Some delegates wanted the president to be elected directly by the people. Others feared that the voters, especially in rural areas of the country, wouldn't have enough information or education or interest to make an informed decision. They worried that big, populous states could dominate the election, or that voters might simply pick a local candidate that they were familiar with. Remember, this was an era long before mass media, back when news traveled by horse and buggy, not the internet and TV. The compromise was the Electoral College, a system where states, not individuals, are the core units for electing the president. It balanced the influence of smaller states with those of larger ones, supposedly giving each state a voice, but in a way that kind of protected against potential mob rule or overly localized interest on the mass scale. So to win the presidency, a candidate must get an absolute majority of electoral votes, at least 270 out of the 538. So it's simply not enough to win the popular vote. The candidate must win enough states to reach that magic number of 270. This explains why candidates often focus their campaigns on certain swing states, places like Florida, Pennsylvania, or Ohio. The outcome in these states is largely uncertain, and a small number of votes can swing a lot of electoral votes one way or the other. While the Electoral College might have made sense in the 18th century, it's become subject of a controversy in recent years. Most people argue that it's no longer representative of the will of the people and it no longer represents the nation accurately, especially in cases where a candidate wins the presidency without winning the national popular vote. That's happened 5 times in U.S. history, including 2000 and 2016. For example, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won nearly 3 million more votes than Donald Trump nationwide. But because Trump won several key states by narrow margins, he secured more electoral votes and thus won the presidency. The Electoral College can magnify the importance of small margins in critical states while ignoring large popular majorities in others. Critics say that this distorts the principle of one person, one vote. So why hasn't this system changed? For one, altering the Electoral College would require a constitutional amendment, which is long and a very difficult process. It would need approval from 2/3 of both the houses of Congress and a ratification by 3/4 of the states. But most importantly, many smaller states will still see the Electoral College as a way to maintain their political relevance. Without it, they'll argue that presidential candidates might focus only on large population centers like New York and Los Angeles, ignoring rural and less populated areas. The system that's in place gives smaller states a bigger voice in the election process. In this sense, the Electoral College ensures that the presidential candidates must appeal to a slightly broader range of voters, not just those in the most populous states. Now, despite its defenders, there's a growing pressure to reform or abolish the Electoral College. In fact, surveys show that a majority of Americans now support moving to a direct popular vote system. Some states have taken matters into their own hands, passing laws to join something called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. This agreement aims to guarantee the presidency to the candidate who wins the most votes nationwide, regardless of the Electoral College system. As of now, the compact hasn't reached the 270 vote electoral threshold to take effect, but it's a sign that the debate over how America elects a president is far from over. So the Electoral College remains a cornerstone of the American presidential election system, and it remains controversial, complex, and still deeply embedded in our country's political landscape. Whether it will continue in its current form or evolve into something else is a question that future generations of Americans will have to decide for themselves. In the end, the debate over the Electoral College is about more than just numbers and votes. It's about what kind of representative democracy Americans want and how they want their voices to be heard. I'm Matt Pierce. Thanks for watching. Take care.